South Africa just had a massive round of by-elections. And while the Patriotic Alliance and Action SA will be jubilant, the DA and the ANC will be in dismay. Here's what happened. So on Wednesday, 6 by-elections took place across South Africa. Because there were so many results to dive into, I've decided to split this video into 2 parts. This is part 1, and part 2 I'll be releasing tomorrow morning on Saturday. Now, before we continue, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel? It's completely free, and all you have to do is hit the subscribe button in the bottom left corner of this video. That way, you'll also be notified when part 2 does come out. Now let's get into it. I'd like us to start off with what is arguably the most pivotal and also the largest by-election which took place, which was in Ward 29 in the city of Johannesburg, in Soweto. Now, what's really important to understand about Ward 29 is that it is split between Diepkloof and Noordgesig. In Diepkloof, it's a predominantly black area where we see a lot of Zulu speakers, Sotho, Tsonga, and Xhosa. On Noordgesig's side, however, it is a predominantly Afrikaans-speaking colored community. Now, these demographics are important, and you'll soon see why. So if we look at the results that happened, we see that the Patriotic Alliance won with 30.46% of the vote, or 1,756 votes. As a result, they won the ward seat off of the ANC. So we see that the ANC trailed overall by almost 8%, and they got 1,302 votes, followed by the EFF at a little over 15%, 914 votes. We then see Action SA in 4th with 559 votes. Now, what's really important is that we break down these results by voting district. So on the Diepkloof side, we see that the ANC was the leading party. They had about 45.74% in this specific voting district, followed by the EFF at 20%, Action SA at around 12%. As we move further south, we see that the ANC continued to lead, this time with 63%, and then the EFF trailing at 16%, Action SA at just under 7%. We then see in the furthest south voting district that the ANC got 43%, the EFF a little over 21%, Action SA almost 13%. And so we see a growing trend here where on the Diepkloof side, the ANC is the leading party, sure, but the vote is heavily fragmented. And so we see the ANC getting at a little over 40% generally, and then the EFF coming in at around 20 or so percent, Action SA then following at around that 7 to 12% mark. As we look at Noordgesig, however, we see an entirely different story. So here we see the PA winning a mammoth 74.51% of the vote in this specific district, followed by the DA at 8.3% of the vote. Just a reminder that the DA was virtually non-existent in Diepkloof, and then the ANC at a little under 6% of the vote. As we keep moving, we see that the PA continues to lead heavily with 64% of the vote, followed by the ANC at almost 7% of the vote, and then the EFF at around 6.5%. So on the Diepkloof side, we see that the black voters are heavily split between the ANC, first and foremost, followed by the EFF and Action SA. On the Noordgesig side, however, we see that the PA is far ahead of any of its competitors. And so what's ultimately happening here is that the PA is doing a very good job of rallying colored voters to its side. And this is very important because when it comes to the ward ballot in municipal elections, just like in this election, the party that wins the ward doesn't necessarily need to win over 50% of the vote. all they have to do is emerge as the largest party. And so, with 30.46% of the vote, the PA emerged as the largest party and was able to win the ward. This ultimately means that if they are able to continue to consolidate the coloured vote and perhaps draw in more black voters or a higher percentage of the coloured vote, they'll be able to defend the ward successfully in the upcoming municipal elections. Meanwhile, the black vote, which is more fragmented, will mean that none of the other parties such as EFF, Action SA or the ANC will be able to come close to the Patriotic Alliance's total. So the PA are in a very strong position over here. So I've taken the liberty to draw up some historical data as well as a line chart so we can actually see how these parties have performed over time. So as we can see here, the ANC has dropped dismally. In 2021, they won 2,692 votes. In 2024, they increased to almost 4,000 votes, and this isn't much of a surprise because if we take a look at the voter turnout figures that I've given, you can see that in 2021, there was a 45.86% voter turnout, and in 2024, 58.64% voter turnout nationally. Because generally speaking, in South Africa, the national elections get a much higher voter turnout than municipal elections. So it makes sense that they grew. We see similar growth with the Patriotic Alliance, who grew from 908 votes to 1,175 votes. But in the by-election, we see an incredibly interesting statistic. You see, the ANC came crashing down to 1,302 votes, their lowest total by far. And we can see the massive slump on the line graph right here. The PA, however, rose to 1,756 votes, which is quite a miraculous achievement. Now, those of you who follow my channel will know that by-elections generally have a much lower voter turnout than national elections and even municipal elections. And so the fact that the PA were able to not only grow in percentage, but actually get their highest amount of voters out ever in this ward is quite an incredible accomplishment. We now shift to the Western Cape, specifically Ward 6 in Swellendam. Here, the Patriotic Alliance was able to win another seat off of the ANC. They won 50.69% of the vote, or 811 votes. The ANC trailed by over 20% with 30.38% of the vote, or 486 votes. The DA came in third place with 18.94% of the vote, or 303 votes. If we delve into the data beneath this result, we see that the Patriotic Alliance has enjoyed exponential growth since first contesting Swellendam in 2021. So during the 2021 election, they only received 4 votes, and that's 0.4% of the vote. In 2024, they actually surged 351 votes, or 30.4% of the vote. And then, of course, in 2025, they hit 811 votes, 50.69% of the vote. Now, it is quite important to mention that the previous ward councillor, who was ANC, actually defected to the PA. So there is a very good chance that he was able to take some of his loyal supporters with him to the party. The ANC seems to have stabilized in this specific ward. We see that in 2021 they had 552 votes, and this dropped to 445 in last year's general election. But then this year they got 486 votes, and so they actually rose a little bit. So it is quite interesting to see where the PA's new voters actually came from. Were they ANC voters, or were they perhaps DA voters or another party? It's a little bit difficult to tell. The DA, on the other hand, had 367 votes in 2021. This then dropped to 295 votes in 2024 and rose again to 303 votes in the recent by-election. And so we see an interesting trend with all three parties this time, where the PA, the ANC, and the DA were all able to grow their vote share in 2025's by-election compared to 2024. Yet again, a remarkable feat for a by-election, and it shows that all three parties did a really good job on the ground of activating their voters and getting them to the voting booths. So again, credit where credit is due. The ANC, the DA, and the PA all performed very well in this regard. We now shift our focus to another part of the Western Cape, specifically Langeberg. So, in Ward 4 of Langeberg, the ANC was able to retain its seat. It won 47.43% of the vote, or 1,127 votes. The DA came in second place with 27.86% of the vote, or 662 votes. And then in third place, we have the PA with 497 votes, or 20.92%. If we look at past data, we see a very peculiar trend in Langeberg. Unlike many other parts of the country, here the ANC support actually skyrocketed from 2024 to 2025. But elections analyst Wayne Sussman actually explained why. You see, back in 2021, if we take a look at the election map, the Freedom Front Plus came in third with 24.2% of the vote, or 348 votes. Now, what's really interesting is that this is not a traditional Freedom Front Plus territory. It's not a place where you have a very big Afrikaans population, but you do have quite a fair amount of Afrikaans-speaking colored voters and black voters. And so, what seems to have happened, as Wayne Sussman explained, is that when the Freedom Front Plus councillor actually defected to the ANC, the Freedom Front Plus vote collapsed. And so if we switch to last year's election, and we take a look at the provincial ballot, we see how the Freedom Front Plus fell all the way down to just 6 votes, 0.4% of the vote, whereas the ANC remained the top party and the PA surged in support. So there is a very good chance that when this councillor decided to defect to the ANC, the vote got split between the PA and the ANC. And so it's not a situation whereby the Freedom Front Plus supporters were necessarily fans of the Freedom Front Plus, but rather fans of the person who is in charge. As we see in the most recent election, the ANC got its highest ever vote tally over here since 2021, whereas the DA remains pretty stable and the PA also remains stable from 2024. So it seems that personality politics played a very big role here. So in summary, if I was the ANC, I wouldn't get too excited about this result because it's not really showing that there's a broader trend where people are returning to the ANC. This was more a personality-based decision where voters obviously felt that they wanted this specific person to run their ward. Thanks very much for tuning into this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. Remember, stay tuned for part 2. It will be out tomorrow morning. And make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and that you hit the bell icon so that you're notified as soon as it comes up. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.